No, 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 don't open the shower, you idiot! No, no, don't take a bath, you moron! Stop it, stop trying to have sex, you idiots, you're in a horror movie, it's not allowed! Until Dawn is the effective video game adaptation of cheesy American horror that Alan Wake, anything by David Cage, and even Night Trap were all trying to be but couldn't be. And what's extra surprising about all of that is that this is Supermassive Games' first real attempt at an original game. The studio has just over half a decade of experience making little PlayStation Move games in HD conversions, and they managed to cash in all that experience and savings to make something uniquely their own. And it's something that a lot of other studios have been trying to do all along. Until Dawn is a non-combat adventure game in the vein of Telltale and David Cage stuff, but it reminds us that this genre spiked earlier as a spin-off of horror games, with 2009's Silent Hill Shattered Memories, thanks to frequent first-person cuts to a fourth-wall-breaking analyst who is just as terrifying as he is funny. Don't expect hundreds of endings and thousands of branches! And don't pay too much wind to this opening about how your own actions will shape your own narrative. We've been there and heard all that before. If you've played any Telltale game, you know how this system works, but do expect a substantial iterative increase in the amount of choice-driven story alterations than you usually see with these games, along with a tone and a theme that fits so well with this genre that it's a wonder no one thought of it first. Supermassive's homage to teenage slasher horror has every trope in the book. Seriously, there's nothing they didn't miss here. There's showers and baths and attempted sex scenes. There's Ouija boards and creepy dolls, and there's even first-person shots with Predator vision because, of course, Predator is a slasher movie. So 8 beautiful, spoiled rich teenagers who all seem to secretly hate each other decide it would be a great idea to have a party in a haunted cabin in the woods in the middle of a blizzard on top of a mountain miles away from civilization, just 1 year after the deaths of some mutual friends make their reunion all awkward. And they also start out as a bunch of assholes. In the grand tradition of schlocky slasher flicks, only one of the 8 is innocent enough to be considered our hero, and the viewer's own hatred of the other guys is played with, weighed by, and rectified by the spoiler-worthy horrors they all eventually have to face. And that's what Until Dawn does so well, is translating not just the cliches, but rather the underlying point of horror movies into a tribute that's more than skin deep. It's very self-aware about how cliche it is, but it's not a parody, nor does it try to subvert those tropes in any kind of weird experimental way. Despite the unoriginality of all its scares, they feel fresh, because this is an uncommon, and perhaps early, example of a true video game thriller. Basic controls have you walking, talking, and QTEing, and walking is done with just 2 speeds, slow and slower, with some sluggish camera work you can't control and unresponsive character animation that makes moving them around furniture a trial-and-error gauntlet, and I was just eating that stuff up with a shit-eating grin. It was great! This type of camera works here for the same reasons it did in old Resident Evil games. An early exploration sequence was legitimately terrifying because of the lighting, the audio cues, and easily most of all, the camera work. That section, in particular, may be the closest thing to that famous old RE4 Hookman demo that might have been released in a good decade. Mysterious collectibles show the player short clips of these characters' future deaths, but everything from text hints to menu labels suggests that these are only possibilities. Witcher-style butterfly effect choices abound, and they're not just written into the dialogue, but also into failed QTEs. That David Cage quote about how game overs are a failure of the game designer feels far more appropriate here than it does there, since extensive new deaths and consequences are written to account for the player not hitting buttons fast enough, or making decisions that only seem rational in hindsight. All of this, from the brilliantly creepy camera angles that suggest something sneaking up on you, to the stats on the pause screen, to the hints from the analyst, and even to the labels on the menus, give the player a set of tools. Tools to work with possibilities written into the branching story to keep these kids alive until dawn. And that's the implied win state, although no game over screens will clearly spell it out for you, and no checkpoints within chapters will make it easy to undo the decisions that may or may not have led to their deaths. There's a real sense of dramatic irony when the player is capable of doing something clearly wrong while also not knowing it, while also knowing so much more than the characters. And that knowledge includes recognizing all the horror cliches. The same morbid sensation of yelling at a screen and going, "No, don't go in the shower," is now, "Okay, they're obviously making me go in the shower, so what can I do to be really safe in this shower?" You use those tools to push against physical danger as well as the antagonisms written into the characters. It's like the game's default, effortless, bad-ending story branch is a director/writer, and you're an editor, and the two of you are fighting over how this story should play out. It even employs reverse psychology and red herrings to mislead you away from decisions you should know better about. So it doesn't matter if you like these kids or not. Eventually you'll grow to tolerate them because it's your job to keep them alive. The player's own agency and fear of failure ends up creating just as much tension as any dark, spooky room can. And together, they add up to a game that's both scarier and more engrossing than the sum of its parts. It's about 8 or 9 hours long and is good for one replay, so it may not be worth $60 whole, but it is a damn solid rental or sale game. Just like the old Resident Evils that were also short as hell, though even the 8 hours of this one still might be stretching it. The last quarter goes for a change in tone that kind of forgets what makes the first 6 hours of the game work so well. It's the part where it seems to be trying to make the same tonal shift you see halfway through From Dusk Till Dawn or when Evil Dead turned into Evil Dead 2. Without wanting to spoil much, the sudden change in focus doesn't really pace well with characters and mysteries the story resolves earlier. The story would have ended stronger, a couple hours sooner, if it kept its secrets better. But even before that, the early acts are obnoxiously full of false jump scares. Maybe so many that you'll burn through a lot of the tension's payoff before the real horror really revs itself up. Its quantitative quota of jolts may be explained by one of these behind-the-scenes featurettes, which show the developers implementing scares based on biometric feedback from playtesters rather than having faith in their own atmosphere. It is Supermassive's breakout first big original game though, and some issues are to be expected, but so are even more pleasant surprises, like how this may be the best looking game on the PlayStation 4, which of course means it has some of the worst frame drops on the PlayStation 4. When we're this close to clawing out of the uncanny valley, these weird little bits stick out so much stronger. Like how some animations look fast and cartoony when most are slow, lumbering, and realistic. It's jarring. I never would have noticed that at lesser fidelities, and it's not exactly awful, it's just interesting. And the perils of modern console gaming also struck me again with this error message. After playing for 3 hours, taking a break, and then booting it back up again, I had to watch this thing recover partially installed data. I don't know how long it took, because it took all night. Didn't finish till I woke up in the morning. Until dawn. I have a feeling that's gonna be patched out, but despite its lackluster climax and a few technical hang-ups, I still had a blast here. It's a confident and fresh take on video game horror that makes a slick adaptation of movie horror along with it. It's a wonder that this genre's progenitors didn't figure out how to do this kind of design sooner, because Until Dawn made it look downright easy.